Good evening. It is 6:30 on April 5th, 2022. This is the time for the committee meeting of the Northern Lebanon School District Board of Directors. The board is meeting as a committee of the whole. We will be discussing the agenda for next week's formal regular meeting. And we do have one voting item tonight, but I will call this committee meeting to order. All the directors have been provided all of the reports in advance of this committee meeting, so please be prepared to ask any questions that you may have. The adoption of the agenda for tonight's committee meeting, you have that in front of you. Is there a motion to adopt the committee meeting agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Great, thank you. Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Also to that point, and we do have a voting item tonight, I was in consultation with the solicitor last month about our voting procedures. As you guys all know, and women, you all know, I prefer to have a voice vote for all of our voting items. Solicitor indicated that the secretary does have to record the votes though per a roll call. So for our procedure going forward, what we're going to try to do is continue with the voice vote as we've been doing, but that will be noted as a unanimous roll call vote as we were doing before, unless there are any negative votes, in which case we will try as best we can between the secretary and myself to identify what those negative votes might be. If it's a particularly contentious or there's seems to be a divide, we will do a regular roll call vote. So I just wanted to let you know procedures going forward because it shifts a little bit as we've been going forward. So we'll move on to item 3 for tonight's meeting, and that is the public comment. I understand that we had one potential public comment, but I do not believe that that person is here. And that person is not, as far as I can tell, participating remotely. So we will move on to item 4. And this is actually item 5, is just the item for board action, which is the change order. Dr. Messinger.
Yeah, we typically have a change order meeting. However, one of the change orders is over the $40,000 limit. In addition to that, Mr. Reese and I were at a leadership conference on Monday and were unavailable for the change order meeting. So we put all 5 of them on this. As you may have seen as well, I attached where we were from a contingency standpoint. With the elementary, we still have not hit our 50% mark yet. And I put on there the field house as well, which is very low at this point. But anyway, the big one, and I feel a little badly because I told Director Bucks that I thought we were done with some of the big ones or most of the big ones. And of course, the next meeting we had a big one. The water line that exists out here that's going to supply the building, where it comes out, as it comes from the road to the building, it is not at a depth low enough to protect it from freezing. So that needs to be dropped so that it can then be covered and we don't have a situation where it's a potential freezing situation. Did I do a good job with that, Mr. Reese? Did I cover that correctly? Okay. In addition to that, there's 4 minor ones. The column sizes, if you looked at those to cover the anchor bolts, there's one for some additional supports. And then this is the one I get stuck on, Mr. Reese. The supports, then there's a piece of that also needed adjusted.
Are you referring to the stage beams or are you referring to where the MEPs go through the wall?
That one.
So there was a ceiling height issue going through a firewall. They needed to compress to make more space, and that's what general contractor change order, or I'm sorry, mechanical contractor change order number 3 for $2,372 is.
And then in addition to that, a change for the pads for the bleachers when we get to that, the foundational pads for the bleachers. So to be frank with you, I was just discussing with Director Marlowe, Director Fowler, Director Bucks, all sit in those change order committees. And I think we all feel a little bit helpless because frankly, these aren't optional things. They have to be done. So it's more of a formality than anything, but at the same time, they need to be officially approved. And so we bring those to you tonight.
Are there any questions for Dr. Messinger for the change order committee? I guess I just have one broad question, and that is, it looks like, at least as far as the elementary school is concerned, we're at about 50% of that contingency budget. We still anticipate from the contractor that the bulk of the change order is supposed to occur in this initial construction portion of the project.
Getting up out of the ground is where the majority of the major change orders occur. I believe that the thing that's hanging over our head right now, I think still that we don't know for sure about, is the some of the sidewalk slash lighting slash curbing issues that we're doing for the township. I don't know that we've figured out if we, what that's going to mean. Those could potentially cost us some money. And I think the other thing that was discovered, I'm going to say a week ago, was the door locks, that there'll be a change order there with the door locks, because I don't want to put blame on anyone in particular, but I guess one part of one part of it was done a particular way with door locks, and another part of it was set up a different way, and it needs to match. And so there has to be a change in order to make those to match. So that's a problem we're still working through.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, as I indicated, this is an item for board action, so we'll be taking a vote on the approval of these change orders. Is there a motion to approve these change orders?
Motion to approve these change orders.
Is there a second?
Second.
And again, I remind everyone that your voice vote will be counted as a unanimous roll call vote unless there is a nay or an abstention. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying yes or aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Move on to item 6, consent calendar.
And before I get into that, I will say it is probably soon time where maybe before a board meeting or maybe even some of these that are a little shorter, we could go after. It is kind of neat at this point to walk through. There's you start to see it shape take form, and they poured some of the pads already, and the beams came in for the gym, and you can see how high that's getting. So we can certainly schedule a time to take you over there if that's what you'd like to do. So I don't know what the weather looks like next week, but maybe shoot for May or something. So coming soon. Item 6, our typical 3 items: the approval of minutes, the student activity count, and the cash disbursements.
Any questions? Discussion? Hearing none. Item 7.
Item 7 is 7.1 is the IU13 budget. All their information is there. While I'm on the subject of budget, we will also have another update for you next week and go through where we are with that. We have a good grasp now of the ESSER funds and how much we've gotten and how much we'll carry over at this point. Also, there is an agreement there with Austell's Rehabilitation that they do some services for us that I think I saw in the agreement they've been doing since 2013. Approval for Jonestown Dental to be our school dentist. And then our general obligation bond, our resolution. And Brooke and Steve are here from Stock and Leader to answer any questions about that resolution. This is what we talked about a couple of weeks ago with Mr. Remig when he was here, that this would be coming. Steve, did you have any general information you wanted to share first?
It's very consistent with what Brad has indicated. Once again, it provides for parameter approvals for up to $36 million worth of a debt in order to do your capital projects. It's a continuation of your prior capital projects, your athletic fields, as well as your elementary school project. Similar to what you did last year, it's just the next step of getting additional funds to actually complete your capital projects.
And if you had a chance to look at that resolution, if you had any questions for Steve while we have him.
I have one kind of understanding level question.
I know with the first bond, we went out for bond for a certain amount and we actually ended up as I understand it, getting more money than the bond is for lack of a
Yep.
better way to explain that. Is there a possibility that that will happen again? And if so, how do we, what do we do with that money? I mean, I know there's plenty of things we could do with the money, but we don't want to finance more than we need. But if that possibility exists, how do we deal with that?
Sure. Fundamentally, you're approving the use of those funds for those noted capital projects. And typically, and to explain why you got more money than what the bonds were stated for, means that the underwriter who bid on the project bid with what's called premium bonds. And therefore, let's say it's $1,000 bond. There may be someone out there that wants to buy it for $1,100. So you've just gotten $100 more than what the stated principal amount is of that bond. So you get additional funds. And it's based on how you structure the deal and what interest rates are being provided and things like that. The goal at the end of the day is to provide the school district with the capital project size that they're looking for. So let's say you want $30 million and there's premium bonds associated with the deal. Hopefully it's structured in a way that the ultimate bid is $29 million of the face amount of the bonds, but then there's an additional $1 million of premium associated with it that gets you to that $30 million. The goal is not to get more money than you actually need. The actual goal is just to get the amount of money that you need to do your project.
That makes good sense. Thank you.
Sure.
Steve, do we have control over that? What if we did get offered more money than what we need?
Well, that's sort of up to Mr. Remig to work with how they structure it. And therefore, the goal is not to get too much more money unless you can use it. Because
Okay.
under the Internal Revenue Code, you cannot over borrow, which
Right.
then leads to the earning of arbitrage. So Brad will work with the underwriter to size it correctly, depending on whether there's premium or discount bonds associated with the ultimate offer.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? No, so we are comfortable keeping this on the consent agenda for next week. Okay, very good. All right, we'll move on to item 8. Thank you to the solicitor. Thank you for that explanation. Appreciate it.
Sure, absolutely. And I'll see you next week.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Buildings and grounds, no items. So we'll move on to item 9, extracurricular.
Yeah, 2 trips, one for May 2022 and one for April 2023. Approval of the fall play. And Pat has the book if you'd like to look at that, and she'll have that available. And then approval of the 2022-2023 musical as well.
Any questions?
I just have one little question. I noticed that the Washington DC trip has only 2 students. Is that because it's an AP class and there's not many kids in it, or I was just surprised to see 2?
I'll have to check on that. Yeah. Good question. I'll find out for next week.
Yeah, 2 students and 1 chaperone. Yeah. Okay, no other questions? Okay, we will move to item 10, the curriculum.
Yeah, some policies for final adoption. I did want to make note of one thing, depending on when you looked at it. There was that line about legitimate business in front of the board. And actually it wound up being in 2 policies, and we had changed it in the final adoption of the one, but there's a second one that has that line as well. So Pat has now struck that out. So it'll be going in both. So next week when you see that, it will be, I mean, it's updated now, but you'll see that next week as stricken from that policy. In addition to that, there's several tentative policies for you. And then finally, a retirement of the student meals account 808.1. I believe all that information was plugged into 808.
Any questions? Discussion? No, hearing none. Item 11, human relations.
Yeah, a good list of substitutes for you there to approve. In addition to that, we have a classified substitute listed. 4 different leave requests for various reasons listed for you there. A couple of redesignations, redesignation from substitute secondary to a long-term substitute due to the timing of it. And that we've now kicked in enough days to make that rate. Employee Tammy Long as a secondary instructional assistant, a staff nurse over at Fredericksburg. Just want to draw your attention also to that those are very specific years. Those are temporary. That's a temporary spot as we continue to fill things. They're temporary because we know over there we're not going to need 4 nurses, and then we've done that with some other cases as well. And then a short-term substitute for a leave in the business education department. 11.5, we have 2 resignations. One is the marching band director, so we'll actually be looking at some options there, and then one is a library assistant.
Great, thank you. Any questions regarding item 11? Hearing none, we will move to adjournment. I would just like to publicly note that the board will be meeting an executive session immediately following this committee meeting to discuss employment and personnel issues. Are there any other items for the good of the committee? Okay, with that then, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.